Let's get our hands
Agreed.
dirty. We got a couple more people coming in. So today, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, Zach, because usually Paula catches me. We're talking 411 from the GPS, right?
Correct. Yep.
Nailed it. Okay, so at this point of year, we should all have all of our models finished being built out and our GPS completed, ideally. I know some of you on this call may or may not. I happen to know some of you don't. But ideally, if you're joining this call and you didn't make it to our GPS call, at this point, we're sitting at our models, our MREA models built out and our GPS built out. So then the question becomes, Zach, how do we take that from an annual plan down to something that's actually going to mean something to us today? And Keller Williams has an answer. Zach, you want to tell us about it?
They do. So that answer is the 411. So a couple things about the 411 that we hear a lot with it. And to start with, the tool was really pulled from the MREA and the One Thing. It's kind of a combination because both of them start diving into what time blocking looks like, prioritizing your goals. If you recall, the One Thing starts out with a big story, right? Think big, aim high, starts out with a wolf story and shooting up in the arrow, right? And then through the book, we progress around what those goals look like. We talk about focusing our time and our attention and how we can get more accomplished, which then leads into the planning and scheduling and calendar, which is what we so love near and dear, which is time blocking, right? And all of that is encompassed and shows up in the tool called the 411, which is a yearly outline of the goal, followed by what you're going to do for the month to achieve that yearly goal, down to what is your success list for the week that's going to outline how you're going to win and ultimately contribute to your success of the month, which will contribute to the success of the year, which goes to the GPS, right? So we execute those goals. So what goes on the 411, Megan, for the yearly goals? How do we decide that?
Yeah, I love that question because it sounds like it'd be this complicated process you're about to go to. But the truth is you already did it. If you've completed your GPS, anything on your GPS that has your name next to it, and let's pause there for a minute. If you're looking at a GPS for your team and there's no names on it, we've missed a step. So we want to go back to the GPS and make sure that the person who owns the item, so whether that's a priority or a strategy, if it's owned by a person, it should have their name next to it. That's how we know who's going to own this result. They may need like help from other members on the team, but ultimately the buck stops with them for that priority of that strategy. So if your name is on it, that goes on your annual section for your 411. You literally just copy, paste that over to the annual piece of your 411, and you're already a third of the way through the process. So it's not real mysterious.
No, and the mistake that's made is teams will either say, well, we'll only have a certain number of leaders, and those are the only names we see on the GPS. And that's a myth. The truth of it is we can assign or have anybody be accountable to a portion of the GPS. It could be your transaction coordinator. If it's around client care and how we're going to execute that, that name could appear there as owning that portion of the GPS, which ultimately means owning it on the 411.
Such a good point. And since we are here with ops, like, you know, you might have your name on the GPS, maybe it's only your name, but then you're responsible for getting your ops team and sometimes even your agents to produce that result. So when you go into your ops team or the agents are going to help you produce that result, whatever part of it that they're going to own for you, that goes on their 411. So a lot of times, I don't know about you, Zach, but I get the question like, what does my TC's 411 look like? Well, whatever you've got, if you've got a referral goal, review goal, if your name is on the GPS for client experience in any way, something that's going to touch the TC, they're going to own whatever part of that you give them to own. and they're going to be responsible for that. So that goes on their 411, even though their name might not be next to the buck doesn't stop with them. Maybe it does, but maybe it doesn't. They're going to take the part that you've given them because you are making that assignment. And it's going to go right on top for their 411.
Yeah. And I hope everyone heard what Megan said there, because what we're really talking about is taking all of our qualitative roles and assigning them a number, right? So the GPS should be quantifiable, like it's quantifiable numbers that we can achieve, get to, we know where we're winning.
Did Zach freeze for anyone but me?
There we go. Did everyone come back?
Okay, yeah, we're here.
Perfect. Great time for my internet to start cutting out. So
we lost you at the 411 should be quantifiable something.
Right, yeah, like it needs a number that you can track that we can achieve that's going to move the business forward. So it's okay to start with a qualitative measure, right? To think about like how we want this client experience to look like. And then it becomes, what do we need to achieve? What number can we assign to this that's going to get us to that goal? That is what then helps drives the 411. And our starting place a lot of times is just this like, just arbitrary number, or not even a number. A lot of times it's just like, I'm going to improve systems, right? Which is not real great when it comes to build down in the 411.
Is anyone feeling super brave and maybe have a very qualitative thing on their GPS that they would like us to workshop right here together in real time and help you come up with a quantifiable way that it could show up on your GPS? Kathy was hiding, so I know she has one. You're on mute.
Not anymore. Okay, so I have our GPS from 2020 and it says under leads, strategy number 1, phone calls around quarterly events. Okay.
My very favorite question for stuff like that on a GPS when I see it is excellent, because that's a great item, right? But the question will be, how will you know when you did it? Right. And that we can start to quantify. So if we took just that one, which was a 2020 goal, so we're not really looking at 2021 at this point, we're looking back at what we could have improved for 2020. If we took phone calls around quarterly events, and I asked you the question, Kathy, like, how will we know when we did it? What would you say?
But we have to have a number. I mean, that's what he just said. It has to be quantifiable. How many people are we calling and how many did we get called? Yeah, really.
So what would it mean for you? Like if you could go back to your 2019 self and answer that question, what would you say?
So instead of saying just phone calls around quarterly calls, it needs to say speaking to 100% of our database or whoever we're doing, yeah, some number.
Yeah,
I mean, I can't say it right now. I could say, okay, we have to call 1,707 people around a quarterly call.
Yeah.
Has
So you could say something like all Mets in the database, because the number may change on a day from day to day. You might add Mets. So you could say something like all Mets in the database get a client care call or an event call, sorry, per quarter per event. Is it like, do you know what Kathy means when she says that? Like if you're on her team, do you know exactly what she means?
Yeah, you do.
Pretty clear, right?
Yeah.
Could you say that, rewind and say that again, your last sentence?
I'll try.
I was typing and
stuff.
I'm not sure which one it was, but we were talking about just Kathy's like, if you made a, like all Mets in your database get a quarterly call for every event, you know, now you know exactly what she means, like, and you know when she did it. Now the who is missing, right? So it'd be parentheses, who's going to own that result? You know, is it Kathy? Is it somebody else on the team?
And someone owning it may not always be the person doing it, but they're the person who is managing it, owning it, ensuring we get done, right? So like in a perfect world, we have a meeting, or like, let's say we're having a monthly team meeting and we're reviewing that GPS. We would be like, Megan, I see your name's located next to, right? We're going to call everyone around the quarterly events and calls all the Mets database. How are we doing? Right? And the expectation would be, even if Megan had nothing to do with that, she wasn't the agent, wasn't the calling, but she owned it, is that she would be able to then tell the team, like, hey, this is how we did. We called da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Here was the opportunity. We didn't get this done, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
And it's hard because we're going into how to write a 411 as well. So I got to keep holding myself back so we don't go there, because we'll be having a session around building one of the 411 out.
And holding it accountable for your team members. So they overlap a little, and that's okay. We
Yeah.
really talk too much about 411s. It's like, I mean, it's like one of the best topics in the whole world. So
Yeah.
Do you also need to have like in there how you're going to track, how you're going to, like whether or not the goal's been achieved? Or is that
So-
just kind of like unwritten and known by the people who are doing it?
I'm a big fan of tracking. It might not say in the GPS tracked by our numbers tracker or whatever, but if there's not something tracking it, if it's quantifiable, if you can't track it, then it's not really quantifiable in my opinion. It's like sports. Like if there's no measurable way to keep score, do you really know what the score is? Like, no, we have to define it and then be able to write it down.
Yep.
Does anybody
Great
else have
question.
one maybe for 2020 that they're like, this feels fuzzy and the group could, help me workshop it right now in real time? Doesn't have to be perfect. That's what we're all here to do.
Well, while everyone's thinking, I know why we get passionate about this is because we tend to complicate business. And if we can follow and have a solid GPS and execute it, we all would either be exceeding or much closer to our goals than what we were at if we just stuck to it and then had a weekly conversation around that. Like, let's just say
I
your
have
team,
one.
oh, perfect.
Comprehensive training plan.
Ooh, that's a good one. I love it. Comprehensive training plan. Zach, you take the first crack at it because she's my client, so I get to slap her around later.
Well, I would love, would anyone else like to take a crack at it to practice, to see if your mindset's in there?
I love that. It's a great idea.
I have an idea and I would like to go there, but this is a safe place for us to practice amongst ourselves before we take it back to our team. So if someone has a thought process, would love to hear it. Nobody?
I mean, do you have a training calendar for, like lined out for each of your agents, in a daily like training calendar for them to follow, and then responsibilities like wrap up meetings or morning meetings maybe for follow up and, hey, how did those things go? Maybe. So accountability.
That's good. How would you write that on a GPS? Think about a SMART goal: specific, measurable, attainable, right? Realistic, time bound. What do you think, Hannah? Because that was a great idea. Like, be confident, own it. That was your spot on. There's no right or wrong. It's just
Right.
Now, how do we make that a statement on a GPS?
Yeah, I mean, make sure, have a weekly by the end of this week. I mean, with the new Ignite rolling out, we're going to have our agents go back through that, so there's another, training tool that we're going to have our agents do. So then, kind of making a SMART goal. Hey, here's a deadline to have this done by, here's a sign up sheet. I'm signing them up if I need to. Accountability, I already added it to their calendars. So I don't know. Is that going in the right path?
So
Sure is.
yeah.
Before you answer, let's pretend Liz is our rainmaker, all of us, and we're all on Liz's team. And Liz came to us and said, comprehensive training manual, that's priority 1 on the GPS. What are your first thoughts? Like, what first runs through your head when you hear your rainmaker say that, our beautiful rainmaker Liz?
I would say how it's to kind of like increase their production or some sort of what's their goal to get them into the right training, like what their problems or issues are, like if they need scripts or conversion rates or something like that, figure out what that problem is and then go from there.
Love that addition, Ashley. So we've got Hannah with like, how do we make it tangible on the calendar? We've got Ashley with what problem are we trying to solve? Who else has an idea or a question? When you just hear your Rainmaker pop into your office and say, comprehensive training plan, I need that.
Well, I mean, it has to be off of like conversion rates. It's either a talent problem or a training problem, you know, that we need to improve the conversion rates. Either where's the gaps? Is it scripts, you know, contacts to appointments? So fill in the gaps and figure out the training that each person needs to go to. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Each person needs to go to.
Yeah, I love that, Hannah.
Mm-hmm.
What are we solving? How are we improving our conversion rates? Anybody else have a question for your Rainmaker if they pop in and just say, deliver me this? It's our number one priority.
Well, I would want to ask who should be responsible for doing the training, because we might have different people that could train on different things. And what can we get from the market center versus somebody on our team actually doing the training?
Love that, Sheila.
Right, who is getting the training? Who is being trained?
Who? Love that addition. Yeah, like what's the question? Like who? For who? For me? For you? For like who's training? Anybody else have a point of confusion if your Rainmaker walks in tomorrow and says, comprehensive training plan, I need that?
To the point of who, I try to figure out why are they saying that? Like, what just happened that made them think to say that? And then try to politely ask that question.
They're Rainmakers. It could have just been a Facebook post they just seen. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's a great addition, Phil, because who knows?
Yeah,
like
I like
if we ask, we get a bit, maybe a tiny bit more clarity. Of course, they might just say, I don't know, I heard it at Mega Camp, but we'll get something. Okay, Zach, we've got all our thoughts out on the table. Bring us home.
I think I really, really, really great information to add. So a statement like that and what it could look like as far as what I heard, right, is we will have a comprehensive training scheduled for the agents outlined on a calendar by when and who's owning it. That's just my quick thought. And I mean, that's one of those things where normally I'd write these down fast and then kind of sit on it just to, you know what I mean, kind of run it by some people, be like, how do we make it better? How do we make it deeper? But that's my first thought. That's one thing you could do. By putting a date, you would know if it was done in half.
Yeah. I mean, I think you guys nailed it. It's like the first point is comprehensive, right? And Ashley and Hannah, you both kind of talked about that. Like, what does comprehensive mean? Like, are you trying to, is this a retention strategy? Is this a conversion strategy? Like, let's define comprehensive. Like, what's the goal of comprehensive? And then Hannah brought it home to like, we've got to have it on a calendar. Phil is, you know, over there with like, well, okay, but like, why? Like, is there a pain point we want to address? Like, maybe there's a specific pain point that's brought this up. You know, I mean, you got, like, with your brains together, it's so beautiful. It's like such a comprehensive strategy. And we didn't plan this, I swear, but this is what's so great about having, I know Zach and I have talked about this a lot, like of having partners. Like, imagine now that you get your GPS and instead of saying like rubber stamp, let's share it with the team. What if instead you said, well, I've got to send this to like 5 of my admin buddies because they're going to see something I totally missed before you shared it with your team, right? Like, and they're going to be like, what is comprehensive? Like, what do you, is there a calendar involved? And you'll be like, oh shoot, I didn't see that. Because all together you guys came up with a way more robust answer than any one of us would have come up with.
Yeah. Another thing you could have added is a quantity, right? It could be hold 2 training sessions a week, or maybe a month, or so many a quarter. So there's other ways that you could also build in
Quantify.
tracking.
I love that.
You know, and really thinking about this, and as we go into this, I know a lot of times we talk about SMART goals and how we apply those. A different perspective on when you're building this out is, I say our job as leadership is to lead, right? We manage systems, we lead people, and part of that leading is allowing them to own the job and to empower them to own the job. And here's the thing, bold law, clarity is power. So when you write these, they need to be clear where there's no questions. If I join your team, providing I understood at least the lingo, right, the language, what that meant, I should be able to look at that goal and know what I need to do to execute it. If there's a gray area where someone on your team is like, I think I made it, I'm not real sure, then as leaders, we have failed of bringing that clarity of this is what we agreed to. So if the SMART acronym doesn't work for you, when you think about qualitative versus quantitative, it's quantitative is black or white. I walk in and have a meeting with Megan, I know whether I succeeded or I failed. If I asked Megan if I had to do that or not, that's on the leaders not being clear about what that was, right?
That's great, Zach. I get so passionate about this, the clarity piece for who. You guys haven't picked up on that yet, because I also think like your job is your job, and that's what's so cool about it, and it's not someone else's job. So like, for instance, what really gets me is when a rainmaker walks in with the GPS, with the goal, the priorities, and all the strategies written, and your name's on all of the priorities. If your name is on a priority, whoever you are, like if maybe you're writing the GPS and you put the rainmaker's name there, but whoever's name is on the priority gets to write the strategy, period. Because the great thing about their job is it's their job. So you're gonna hold them accountable to the priority deliverable, whatever that line item says. In Liz's case, maybe it says conversion rates at, and it has a conversion chain goal. And then whoever owns that's gonna get to write the strategy for the comprehensive training to fix the conversion rates, depending on what the comprehensive means for her team. So whoever's name it goes there on the P level gets to write the S's, gets to write the strategies. Period, 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 because their job is their job. Now they might write a strategy and put someone else's name next to it, and that's great because that's delegation. But if it's you, if you are in charge of that priority, then you should get to write the strategies behind it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's such an impactful meeting. Like so many of our meetings are generic, or we're rushing to cover, and it's empowering and it's impactful when we can sit down and we pull out the GPS or the 411s, be like, who's responsible for this? Where are we at on the strategies, and what do we need to change?
And in case you missed last week, Zach is talking about like the strategy of after you create your GPS, like making either a part of your team meeting or having like a GPS meeting where everyone whose name is on it, you know, reports in and has to stand up in front of the team and say, you know, here's where I am on this because my name's next to it. I own it. Would you guys like to do another one?
Yes. I missed last week, so I don't know if I can speak up on any of this. I haven't done my homework in today. I mean, where I've been struggling is the very first goal, right? That's where I usually struggle. I can figure it out from there.
You walked right into Megan's world, my friend. You take this, Megan. This is all you.
I'm like waiting for Zach to give me permission to go. No, you missed it last week. Like I have such strong feelings about this. Like agents think in units. So I'm so frustrated with getting these GPSs that say 100 units, 1,000 units, 500 units. Like
that's what mine says.
Who the heck cares about your units? What I want to know is how much money you want to make. So in my opinion, businesses talk about profit, agents talk about units. We're businesses. Like if your team has a DOO, you're a business. I mean, solo agents, leave them to their units. They can figure that out. But if you are a business, you talk about profit. So the number one thing, in my opinion, like pretty much period, that goes at the top is going to be profit. Now you can have like a colon. So it might be like $100,000, and then you could put a parentheses and the number of units you think you need to get there. But when we talk about profit, we have so many more levers to pull. Like you can pull the lever of average sales price. You can pull conversion rates. Like you can pull pretty much every lever in your business deals with profit. When we talk about units, there's way fewer levers to pull. And who cares? So you get these big teams. Like, I don't know if you guys were at Mega Camp, but you have like Haro Satian on stage saying, I never made money. Like this is a guy who's been on family reunion stage and Mega Camp stage after stage after stage, telling people his systems that work, right? What a lie. Like, and I, like with love and respect in my heart for Haro, I have so much respect that he came back to Mega Camp and said, man, I had it wrong, you know, because I thought about units. Like my success was couched in units and not in profit. Like, I don't care if you do 1,000 units, if you make negative $100, then you missed it. Like, that's just a vanity number. Units is vanity. Profit's the real thing. I got sideways. I got a little off track, but I think it should be profit, man.
I would agree. I mean, at minimum GCI, but
Minimum.
100% anything. Yeah. I mean, I know Megan is 100% on board with profit. I have different perspectives where maybe GCI, definitely not the units, because it just doesn't get you anywhere, right? And the bottom line is that if abundant life for you is, let's just say it's a smaller team, right? Just using an example. And let's say you want to bring home $100,000, because that's always what every new agent tells us is $100,000. That's like what they teach them in school. Yeah, that's your goal. So you don't care if you sell 1 unit or 30, right? We need to figure out what's important about that dollar amount and what does that mean to you? What is it going to get you? What is it going to provide for those around you? And that's just another way of looking at what Megan's talking about. That's why the profit's so important. It's about what is that going to do for the people in your life that we told you were going to have an abundant life when you joined our team.
Are you talking about the big why?
Big why,
We're
Kathy,
teetering on that, but no.
But yeah, and that's, I mean, you missed it, Phil. Here's my other soapbox. Like, don't write a GPS until you've done an economic model that goes 5 years out, because I don't even understand what we're doing until we have that, because the 5-year out econ model is going to tell us what the owners of the business want to draw and what the company needs to retain for growth. And we're going to work out everything else going backwards. And there's, I mean, some beautiful art and science happens in that, where you can see your growth curves. I mean, you can predict like amazing things that you would not think you could predict when you do a 5-year economic model and you really focus on the model. You go backwards first and you go forward. So if you don't know what that means, like, talk to your coach, but like, you know, start with your econ model, start with year 5. If your Rainmaker is bought in to what's in the profit box in year 5, every other conversation gets easier. If you have to kind of fill it in because your Rainmaker's not sure, then you need to go back to the table with your Rainmaker and be like, let's put a real number here. You know, is your number 100,000? Is it 1 million? Is it 2 million? Like, what's the real number? Because every decision you make starting today is to hit that 5-year goal. And by the way, it's not just up to our Rainmakers. It is up to, you know, what do you want to be making in 5 years? Is that included in that 5-year goal as far as the Rainmakers profit plus what everybody else on that team, like Zach was saying? You know, we've promised big lives to our team members. That 5-year goal better be big enough that everybody's able to hit it. That's the story, you know, that's the story of Keller Williams, really.
And and bringing it back in from the GPS and how that shows up on the 411, a bad 411 is a direct result of a bad GPS that we've had, or lack thereof, right? Because it's, what's the opposite of clarity is power. The not having clarity right, is a weakness. It's the opposite. It could be an opportunity for you when you have that around there. So we hear it every year. I've been there. Well, the team hasn't, or the Rainmaker hasn't done a GPS yet. We would say we are more than capable, smart, bright people to get that accomplished and do it, at least from our end and perspective, so we have a foundation to build off of. That sets you up for a great year, because now you can use your 411 and then have a relationship with that in your goals to execute it.
Yeah, profit.
I'm flipping through my budget real fast to see, oh, we don't have enough in here to that 5-year plan and work back. That's interesting. I like that a lot.
Yeah, you weren't here last week, so I'll drop the link for a sample version.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
We use that conversation a lot. I mean, it is a funny play on words that works out, but fundamentally, if you think about the way a GPS works, it does not work if we don't have an address. Right? It will not produce the steps in between, tell us when to turn, be annoying, all of that stuff that goes with it, if we do not have an end in mind of where we want to go. It's only going to point us in the direction we tell it. That's why it's important to have that 5-year, like Megan's saying, so you know the direction you're going.
You don't have a destination, it's just a compass.
Like that.
I get so excited about this. I already want to jump into next week's topic.
I know, me too. I keep thinking, should we wait to talk
I
about
know.
that? Probably wait to
So
talk
much
about
fun.
that. Yeah, the week's one, but there's so, I mean, next week, just so you like tease back into it, like next week we're covering, you know, how do you 411? So whether you're 411ing yourself or you're 411ing your team member, and there's a lot to go over there. So we're trying to not go too much into that while we're doing this topic. I will say just one more tip on actually creating your 411. Another kind of a common like pitfall I see when people create their 411s is they want to fill out, if you've never seen one, it's like a page with annual, month, and then 4-week blocks, like Zach was talking about, or if you use it in a spreadsheet, 4-week blocks. But the common issue I see a lot is people fill out every week for the whole month, and that would be problematic. So just as far as common problems go, that's one, because you're always like super optimistic about what you're going to do every week. And so then you end up having to rearrange everything. So you fill out like 1 week at a time. And then if you have to bump something down to the following week, you can just drop it, but 1 week at a time instead of the whole thing.
If you go to the onething.com, you can find an example of a 411. If you don't have one, by whatever.
Yeah, I'll drop because they've got their digital version. Jeff Woods dropped I have a copy of his personal one. I'll link you there.
So that's another great tip. If you're going to use words like I have used, which is a relationship with your goal, I am a digital person. Like I very much limit my paper. And yet I think it's very, very important that if your GPS isn't out on your desk right now, or your 411 where we're looking at it and you're realigned with your priorities, that may be a habit you might want to pick up and take a look at.
That's a good point. And I'm actually thinking too, it might be fun to like print it out, put it in like a cheap picture frame with glass so that you can just use like a whiteboard marker to like mark on it, write stuff in, check stuff off.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And also, I believe a great defense is a great offense, right? And that's another area too, to where we can have powerful conversations with the Rainmaker. If we meet on Monday or email, if they don't, like whatever that communication looks like for your team, should be a meeting. And we share what our priorities are for the week based off where we want to be at for the month, based off the year, which was a GPS we all created together. Now we can avoid some of those conversations midweek when we're consistent in that, because the Rainmakers won't throw as much stuff. Or if they do, you can say, great, but these are the priorities we talked about on Monday. What gets replaced? What needs moved?
Kind of like our book study last week I was talking about. Anyone else have a GPS to 411 issue they'd like help resolving, or like Liz, one that you're like, this is still not quite right, I need help clarifying it?
Should I put things on my 411 that someone else, like if I'm holding someone else accountable to doing something, should that be on my 411?
My first thought is who actually owns it, like whose name is on the GPS. And if you are, like, for instance, when you hold someone accountable, maybe they report to you, like they 411 to you, like our Rainmakers do sometimes. But ultimately, if their name's on it, I'm probably going to leave it on their 411 and just use that slot. Oh, there's probably some personal preference here. What would you do, Zach? I just don't want mine to get gunked up.
Right. Oh yeah. If I didn't own it, I wouldn't. But like if I'm trying to think of an example, like for one, I know a lot of people do not hold their team 411s on there. I did because I felt like it was part of my 20% and it was something I time blocked. So like for me, a weekly activity was like hold X number of agents accountable to their 411 weekly with a meeting. Like that was one of my weekly things. So that's where I don't have their goals, they own it. But I have on there that I need to meet with them weekly. That was just my preference. So I knew that was a 20% thing that did non-negotiable, right? I didn't miss those.
It's a good question though. And there's probably some gray area. Like if we were throwing a client event and ultimately the client strategy was, my name was on it, but I had delegated out a piece to my TC, it might still go on my 411 just to, I have that constant reminder that like we still needed to book that event venue or something. So you know, maybe a little personal.
Yeah, I'm thinking things along the lines of like making sure that our listing manager actually like gets the newsletter sent and does all of the marketing things in our 36 touch. Like, does that go on my 411 or is it just on her?
My perspective just on hers, and if you're meeting with her weekly, then that preference, but that could be something where you're like meet with weekly, right, to outline or review that. Or maybe it's just an activity because it's something that's done once a month. I mean, I have moved 20% items on my weekly that maybe doesn't make my year based on an event or something that we have that is truly a 20%. Like, hey, I need to meet with Megan because we're planning to do this and she needs my help with it, right? And it's like a one-time thing that appears.
I mean, I could say some stuff about that, but I probably won't. But if we have to if like we are constantly worried about that, we may be in relationship with the wrong talent.
Agreed. It goes back to not allowing them to own the role. Because really, they should be bringing it.
Yeah. Again, I could say more, but I won't. 15 more minutes. Who has something else we should cover, or should Zach and I just keep going? Because we could probably talk for like another 2 hours about 411s.
Or do we still have questions around the GPS? Because I've seen a lot of writing and kind of nodding. So do we need to touch on that some more? Do people have questions? We can go there too if we need to.
These are your 15 minutes.
Okay, so I have a question. Like our GPS says are 650,000 in GCI, but we don't have a profit. And now each priority was leads. That's all it was. The priority was get leads. Is that a priority, or does it need to be SMART? Does that need to be how many leads do you need to get? I mean, does it have to be more specific?
Based on what we heard today, what do you think?
Yeah. Gah.
But I think, I mean, that's a great point though, because the priority part of that, you could, I mean, you could go, what, like Megan said, what is the priorities based on your 5-year plan? I've seen people that go leads, listing, leverage, or client care. I've seen it where it's listed priority is like listings, second is buyers, third is client care. I mean, there's a lot of different priorities, but yes, Kat, I mean, you would want that to be specific. So leads is great. How many leads do we need to generate, or what's our goal?
We need numbers. This has to be a
And then
lot
would a
more.
good strategy then too be making sure you have a good conversion rate, so that's actually enough leads to get you to your goal.
It's an excellent strategy on a GPS. So yeah, you could say, you know, you could have priority leads X number, like that's one way, and you might even have a parentheses at our current conversion rate, and then you can have a priority 2 that said leads, you know, X number at, and then an improved conversion rate, and then those strategies would be a conversion rate approval approach. So yeah, I mean, you could like, what does your business need, and then just quantify it. So I love that. Both Kathy and Liz, like, it depends on your business. Kathy, you may just be thinking like generate more quantity, convert at the same rate, but somebody else might be thinking our quantity's fine, let's convert better. So what does leads mean to you? Like, how will you know you did leads? You know, how will you know you did it?
Right. Right, because our GPS looked like, here's a number, and then our first priority was leads, and then listings, then leverage, and then underneath of those we had a strategy that goes with it, which obviously from the first one I mentioned needs to be a little more defined. And each time I do this GPS 411, it's like, oh, that's helpful, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get better. It's like any skill, you get better the more you practice. So the more you do it, the better you get.
Well, and I think a lot of us get down because we don't know, we don't understand why we've either missed our goals. And a lot of it just comes down to, we just needed to go one more step to hit the goal. So like, you probably have a really good GPS there, Kathy. It just needed to go one more step to apply a number to each of it. So we're real clear about how to get there, right? The address.
Right. It's great. So very helpful in timing, I tell you. Good planning, you guys.
I'm glad you said that, because we were talking yesterday. I was like, guys, we're late on this conversation. Next year's happening in April.
We sent out our training calendar for the month today and told all of our agents, Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
October 1st.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and we're having a lot of those conversations about looking to make hires, and it's like, oh boy, we need to be right a good 30, 60, 90. We should have had them in place October 1st, starting today.
And in case that's a new concept for anyone here, October 1st would be the new year, because depending on your market, if you've got, let's just say, a 30-day escrow period and then maybe a 60-day action to outcome timeline, then you're looking at anything you do from October 1st on being actually for a 2021 close. So it depends on your market, but for me, mine is a 60-day horizon. Some markets are 90-day horizons, which means they really look, it was maybe September 1st was their new year. So.
Well, let me add to that. It's also not just industry. I have several outside of here, and even in the medical field, that 90 days, that 60 to 90 is a pretty common cycle in sales when you're working a database. Cutco works off of that. I know a few people that are in medical sales, 3, that also work off of a 60 to 90 day cycle. as far as working your database. So I'm sure there's probably some science behind it. I don't know that.
But it's like one of those weird laws. It's like that was just true in like our actual database on our team. If you tracked it in your database, you'll fall somewhere between 60 and 90. I'd almost bet money. So yeah, this is like something that's weird in there. But
yeah. Well, yeah, we if you go back and look, I bet for most of us, if you would look, as tough as COVID was, a lot of us started doing care calls, right? In May and June, we really started picking up speed, some of us in April, and it makes complete sense why we had such big August and Septembers.
I got a random question.
Shoot.
So besides, your big goal, Megan, you definitely were like, it should be profit. Zach saying could be CGI. I'm here doing my math real fast. Besides those, are there other common ways to set that goal or common thoughts around what that goal should be?
I do have a team that wanted to donate $30,000 was their goal.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's fair. I've got a team with a donation goal. I've only one time, Phil, let a team set a qualitative G on a GPS, and it was for a short-term GPS, really at a 4-month GPS with a qualitative outcome. And so there are maybe a very few rare exceptions, but I would say in general for like your whole business GPS, you're really looking at like you need an outcome, like you need money to be the outcome of your GPS in order to know that you had a successful business year. There are some qualitative things you want to, like if you had a target for culture or you're working on something very qualitative, that you might get permission from your coach to set a qualitative goal. But other than that, if you're looking for the annual one, in my opinion, it's profit.
Yeah.
Yep. Like it.
So, I mean, so much of depends on it. Like I get so hyped up about this because it's everything. It literally is people's lives that we're trying to empower them and have a big life. And that clarity is what gets them there. Right. And that's how we do that. And like another example, right? We'll have conversations and you hear these conversations, I've had them, where we're like, oh, we really like that person, or we think they do an okay job, or like they're doing a good job. But then you look at the GPS and nothing is executed. Right? Or it's not clear. So now you're telling me they're doing a good job, but we know from the MREA, it tells us that talent is defined as someone who was hired to do the job well and execute it at a high level. That's talent. So now it's like, okay, so how do we know that if we don't have a clear defined goal they're going after and they're meeting it? We're just qualitative. We're just saying, hey, they're a great person, which they may be, but are they truly moving your business forward? And are we supporting them in a way that gets them where they want to be at, where we see them? We can't do any of that if we have too much qualitative stuff, because then it's just a perspective. Then it's just an emotion. I may feel differently about somebody, right? Just if I don't have hard numbers to stick to and to go through that.
Even for ourselves in our roles, like I can't be the only person who has ever gotten into a very difficult time in the business and wondered how I knew if I was being effective, and then having the tool of the GPS to go back and be like, no, look, we moved the profit goal forward by 40%, like year over year. That's an incredible outcome. Yeah, we screwed some stuff up, like that happened. But when you know that like you executed on your GPS and you moved the income forward, there's very few people in your organization, including your rainmakers, who are going to argue with a gain year over year in profitability. So it's very clear even for us, like in the ops role, like how do I know I'm good at my job? I deliver on the GPS. When I deliver on the GPS, profit goes up.
And the whole idea is that, as I have often said, the idea of even the 411 or the GPS and just what you're doing is to have a business that supports the lifestyle you want. That means you have to execute on the business to make it big enough to support the life you want. The idea is not to cap your life based on what the business can do. If you're looking at it from that perspective, you'll always have a ceiling of only what the business will allow you to do. And with that mindset, I've been there, but I wouldn't be here today doing the coaching and the lifestyle that I wanted if I had that mindset of just, oh, what does the business allows? Right. So it's pushing that and thinking outside too of like, how do I make the business big enough, support the Rainmaker to get his goals so we all can win?
I'm gonna give you one more lecture and then I swear I'll stop. But imagine, like, if you're looking for your income opportunity, imagine being able to go to your business owners and say, like, your return on investment since I've come onto the team has been X. Like, imagine that the return on investment, maybe profitability was at, you know, they were making $500,000 when you came in profit. And when you're looking at whatever point year to date is, you know, 3 years later, 2 years later, whatever, they're making 800,000. That's 300,000. What percent increase is that? I mean, where could they go and put their money and get that kind of an increase? There's no market in the world they could go get that kind of an increase for. You want to raise? Take in that information and be able to say that. Lecture over. I'm passionate about ops people like making money and like thinking about how do you make money here? You know, like what is your opportunity and how do you prove your worth on paper? So that it's not a qualitative feeling. Do you like me enough to give me more money? It's like, what are you doing that has grown the income of the company?
Those are your negotiation skills. For sure.
And we've all got to do it when we're looking for that next level income. Now don't go to your Rainmaker and said, Coach Megan said you need to give me more money. Or do, but take the profit number with you. And then okay, gang, we have 4 minutes left. One last minute question. Are you getting 4 minutes of your day back?
Fun
I think it's 4
as
minutes of your day
always.
back. Yeah, thanks for coming. We'll see you next week for How to 411, whether that's yourself or your operations staff that reports to you or your Rainmaker. So how to actually 411 next week.
Thank you.
Anything between now and then, Zach, that I'm forgetting? No, right? We'll just see you next week. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, we'll see you next week. We're good.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.